Do you have somebody in your life, whether it be a beloved pet that's maybe getting up there in years, or an elderly parent or grandparent, or somebody who is sick or dealing with something that may take them a little bit sooner than we were prepared for? Are you already starting to grieve them? And if so, is it helping you, or does it just steal moments from today? Hi, my name is K.A Bloch, and I am the award winning poet and author of 4 books that consist of poetry and prose. My channel here is called The Practical Poet, and I also have a blog of the same name at thepracticalpoet.com, where each week on my blog and on this channel, I feature a different poem from one of my 4 award winning books, or maybe even some new material. And the poem that I'm talking about today comes from my third book called Gather Seeds of Hope. And this is a poem called Bracing for Heartbreak. And this has to do with starting to prepare ourselves for when we get some bad news or news that we maybe weren't expecting. So earlier, late last year, about November, we found out that my beloved cat Bailey, who is about 11, he's so cute. I wish that he would come in here, but he's super shy and doesn't want to meet anybody. But he's just got the cutest little face, and he's the sweetest little boy. And we found out that he's got an aggressive type of cancer in his mouth. I can't even think of the name of it, but um, it's pretty untreatable, and we're just gonna let him live out his life and enjoy him, and just love on him as much as we can. But I also was thinking this past Christmas about how this is probably our last Christmas with Bailey, and so before he's even left us, before he's even really sick, he's still acting like his normal happy self. He's got his appetite, he plays, he runs, everything seems fine. And I know that someday that's going to change, probably someday quicker than I'm ready for it to, but I'm already grieving him. I'm already missing him. I'm already, kissing him goodnight and saying, I love you, I miss you. And he's right there. He's sleeping in the other room. And I'm already kind of grieving for him. Is that helping me when I'm with him? Does he sense that maybe I'm already starting to grieve for him, and that's going to make him pull away because he doesn't want, to see me in any kind of pain? I don't know. I mean, so far he seems like he's acting pretty normal, and I'm hoping that that's going to stay. But is it good for me to be grieving him already? Sometimes when people hear of bad news or news that they weren't expecting or don't want to deal with, they go into a state of denial, and they kind of put their blinders up and they say, I don't want to hear about it, I don't want to know about it, I'm just going to go about my life as if I don't know this information. I kind of go the other way. I start to prepare myself, and they call that, there's a term for that kind of preparation, and it's called anticipatory grief. And that's where you start to anticipate how you're going to feel at some point when this person is gone. And you already start to, act as if they're gone. But they're not. They're here. They're on earth. They're still with us. We can still talk to them, still kiss them, still hug them, still love on them, still do it, all of the normal things. But in the back of my mind, we're already kind of preparing for life without them, if you will. And that's not really fair to them. I mean, I wouldn't want somebody to put me in the grave before I'm ready to go there. And it's definitely not healthy for us either. I mean, denial isn't healthy either. So they're both kind of two ends of extremes. It's not healthy to go into denial, but it's also not healthy to start anticipating how you're going to feel. You don't know how you're going to feel when somebody passes away. I started doing that when I knew my mom was really sick, and I knew that she was going to come home because she came home in home hospice. But I also knew that life as we knew it, life with how my mom used to be, was gone. And so I started grieving a little bit for her, even though she was still here on earth, and I could still talk to her and still hold her hand and still sit by her bedside. But I started to kind of grieve for, I started to prepare myself for missing her and prepare myself for life without her. And that wasn't really fair to do that to her. She was still there, and I think I probably cried more for my mom before she died than after. And I think, leading up to it, you always start to question, am I doing enough for this person? Is there another doctor that we should see? Should we get a second or a third or an 18th opinion? Is there anything else that we could do? And all the time that you're watching your loved one slip away, you're thinking in the back of your mind, there's got to be something else that I could be doing. And it's really a powerless feeling. You really start to feel like you're not doing enough, and let's face it, we're not God, right? We can't control everything. Um, but that doesn't mean that we should start to grieve for the person either before they're still here. And so once my mom did pass away, it was almost like a breath of relief in a way, because the burden was off of me to try to save her, if you will. Like, what's done was done. I had done everything that I could, and I just had to let go and let myself know that she was at peace. But those weeks and months leading up to that were hell for me, because I was grieving her before she was even gone. And so maybe I did the flip side. Once she was gone, I didn't grieve as hard because I had pre-grieved, if you will. I had dealt with that anticipatory grief. And I had tried to imagine my life without her, which eventually did happen. So that was the point of this poem that I don't even think I talked about the poem that I'm featuring. It is a poem, like I mentioned, from my fourth book, and that poem is called Bracing for Heartbreak. I'm going to lower this down just a wee bit. There we go. Bracing for Heartbreak, and it has to do with preparing yourself for those moments in life that are going to suck, basically. And, we hear a lot of times when people will say, be happy, live every moment. We never know what tomorrow's going to bring. But in some cases, we do, don't we? We know there's certain things that are going to happen in life that are not going to be great, and then we're going to have to eat a shit sandwich sometimes. Pardon my language, I don't mean to swear, but it's true. And it's like when I get a new kitten, and I'll be cuddling this tiny little kitten in my arms, and I'm kissing him on the head, and I always say, you're going to break my heart someday, aren't you? Like, you're going to have to leave me someday, and I'm going to be in that state of grief. And this is a kitten. This is a tiny little fluff ball that's probably in just the first couple months of his or her life, and I'm already projecting into the future for when they're going to leave me. That's not healthy. And I say it in kind of in jest. I mean, I don't cry, and I don't, go into a state of depression because I know that someday they're going to leave me. But I do say, someday you're going to break my heart. You're going to have to leave, because we know that animals don't last forever, and we probably are going to outlive them. And we probably know at some point, especially as we start to get into our 20s and 30s, that there's going to come a day where we have to probably bury our parents, and we want that, right? Because the flip side of that is that they're burying us, and that's not the natural order of things either. So we kind of know that at some point we're probably going to have to bury our parents, say goodbye to beloved pets, and maybe friends as we all age, and probably at some point maybe an older sibling we may have to say goodbye to. So we know that there's things that are going to happen. But does that mean that we worry about that today? Does that mean that we start thinking about our life without them? Does that mean that when we see them, we hug them a little longer? No, we can't do that. We can't project that onto somebody else. We kind of know that in the back of our mind, that sometimes life is going to suck, and not all of our dreams are going to come true, and there's going to be disappointments and stuff. But there's also a lot of good that's mixed in there as well, and those are the moments that we have to hold on to, whether the person is sick or not, or elderly, or what have you. We can't project our grief into the present or into the future. Even when we like just have to deal with today, and making the best of what today has to offer. So what I'd like to do is get into the poetry reading of Bracing for Heartbreak. And you'll see different scenarios in this poem. This is not, well, some of it's autobiographical. There's a couple of verses in here that maybe stem from my real life, but for the most part, there's you're going to hear some verses in here of different scenarios of people that are starting to deal with kind of preparing themselves for some of the grief and the heartbreak that they know is going to be coming their way. And then the poem kind of gets into like, there's a lot of good in life, and that's what we have to focus on. We can't focus on the bad, or anticipatory grief, or anticipating what bad is going to happen. Life is hard enough, right? Why do we make it harder on ourselves? We should just try to enjoy those moments. And it sounds cliche, and to live every moment, and dance like no one's watching, and all that stuff. And I kind of roll my eyes at that kind of thing, but maybe that's really good advice. Isn't that better than the flip side, and then crying for somebody who is still here? I mean, I could go kiss Bailey right now. He's laying on the couch, he's sleeping. I don't have to grieve him. I can love him right now and be in the present moment with him. And that's what I should focus on. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get into the video poetry reading of Bracing for Heartbreak. If you don't want to stick around for the video poetry reading, the full poem is available on my blog at thepracticalpoet.com/blog. And then you would look for the poem Bracing for Heartbreak. And the book Gather Seeds of Hope is also, the link to that book is on there. And this is the only one of my books that's available in a nice hardcover. So if you want to look for that book, that is available on my blog as well. So by the way, before I get into the video poetry, I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of things here. Just take a quick sip of tea. I've been talking all day, so my voice is a little hoarse. So if I'm coughing a little bit, I apologize. We have a nice, really beautiful blue sky out there, some clouds, but very cold. I think it's only 20, but we've had below zero and like single digits. So actually today, it's weird that 22 degrees feels warm, but it does. And no snow today, so that's a good thing. So I'm going to go ahead and put my glasses on. Again, this is a poem called Bracing for Heartbreak, and it's from my poem Gather Seeds of Hope. It's not a super long one, so I hope that you'll stick with me for it. The hospice nurse gathered her things and said it won't be long. She patted me on the shoulder and advised me to stay strong. Enjoy the time that's left, she said, for it could be any day, as I braced myself for heartbreak that I knew would come my way. A teenage girl stood patiently, waiting for her chance to see if her childhood crush would invite her to the dance. She keeps trying to win him over with her kindness and her charm until she spots him with another girl walking arm in arm. She did have her suspicions, and this does confirm her fears. She braces for the heartbreak as she tries to fight the tears. A little boy hides in his room as his parents fight again. He knows that they were happy once, but can't remember when. He hears the slamming of a door, preceded by a shout. He braces for the heartbreak as his father marches out. My kitty, she turned 10 last week. I think it's fair to say that half her life has come and gone as the years just clicked away. I hold her a little tighter and kiss her furry head, knowing that someday I'll be embracing grief instead. So many moments of sorrow sprinkle throughout our lives. We brace ourselves for heartbreak so we're prepared when it arrives. These moments are inevitable. They're a part of life, but still, they strengthen our resolve, but they also test our will. This all sounds so dismal and so very gloom and doom. It's easy to push joy aside and let the negative consume. Both are just a part of life, the good along with the bad, the yin and yang of balancing the happy and the sad. We can brace for heartbreak, for it surely will arrive, but we can also embrace happiness and be grateful we're alive. So that was the video poetry reading of Bracing for Heartbreak. Again, the different scenarios. Like I mentioned, I said this wasn't autobiographical, but a couple of these verses actually were. The hospice nurse gathering up her things, that was very real for me. The saying, it's not going to be too much longer, honey, and enjoy what's left. And again, get rid of that grief that you're already feeling and just enjoy the time that's left with the person. The teenage girl waiting, to see if she's going to be invited to the dance. I mean, that was me as a kid. I was hoping that the boy that I crushed on would ask me to the dance, and then I see him, with another girl, and I realize it's not going to happen. And so it doesn't have to be all like death and all of that stuff. I mean, there are very real disappointments that are smaller than the death and all that. This was just, a childhood disappointment, and carried it with me still, obviously. And then the verse that kind of started this whole poem was about my kitty turning 10, and that was a couple years ago that I wrote this. So she is like 13 right now, my little cat Bella. And I do remember that when I kissed her on the head, and knowing that someday, I'm gonna be embracing the grief of her. But and like Bailey, who's sick right now, I can't think of life without them. I have to just go and enjoy them, right? And that was kind of the point of the poem here at the bottom. Both the good and the bad it's a balancing act, and you have to kind of weigh the yin and the yang, of the good and the bad, the happy and the sad, and just try to embrace those moments. Sure, we can know in our hearts that bad things are going to happen. I mean, that's just all a part of life, and the bad makes us appreciate the good a little bit more. So maybe if we think about it that way, you can't enjoy the good if you don't know what the bad feels like. We can't just live on one emotion our whole lives, right? We have to kind of ride that roller coaster, and it makes us really appreciate the good in life when we kind of have to embrace those moments of grief and of sadness and disappointment and all of those negative things that are all a part of it. So, um, with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I do want to read a quote here that I included in my book. This is from a woman named Corrie Ten Boom, and I did learn that she was a watchmaker and then later became a writer and maybe a little bit of a philosopher. I'm not sure about that, but she has this poem in here, or this quote in here that I included in my book. And the quote is, "Worrying is carrying tomorrow's load with today's strength, carrying 2 days at once. It's moving into tomorrow ahead of time. Worrying does not empty tomorrow of its sorrow, it empties today of its strength." And again, that is a quote by Corrie Ten Boom. And how true is that, right? We can worry all we want, but that's not going to change tomorrow. That's not going to change the fact that my Bailey is still sick and that he may not be with us next Christmas. It's not going to change anything. It's just going to steal today of its joy, and maybe take a little bit of strength with it. So we have to strengthen our resolve for those moments when they do happen, and we can do that by keeping ourselves healthy and our minds clear and healthy, and our relationships strong, and our bodies strong and healthy, and so that we can mentally and physically handle those bad moments in life when they do hit. So with that, I thank you so much for sticking with me for this video poetry reading of Bracing for Heartbreak. Again, the full poem is available in its written form on my blog at thepracticalpoet.com/blog. And if you like what you hear and you want to be notified every week when I do a new video poetry reading, just click the like and subscribe button. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go find Bailey, and I'm going to give him a big old kiss and maybe a treat, and just enjoy some time with him today. So I hope that wherever it is in your world, it's warm and beautiful. And I'm wishing you a wonderful rest of the day. Thanks so much.